quiet all of a sudden. I'd like to welcome everybody. And Congressman Fry, I wanted you to know I appreciated the humor that you started out with. I was going to tell a joke. I was going to tell a vegetable joke, but it was too corny. So anyway, my name is Rick Lee, chairman of the Governor's Nuclear Advisory Council, and today is a great day in South Carolina, and thank you so much for being here. Who would have thought that in the last year alone there would be such a dramatic change in the nuclear industry? I see many folks here from last year. If somebody had told us it would look like it looks today when we were here last, I would have probably chuckled. But lo and behold, it's emerged that nuclear energy has become a driving force in our country. With executive orders from President Trump, DOE, RFIs, opening of old nuclear plants, and revamping of government agencies, along with a flurry of new designs, we're at the threshold of major growth. With the leadership of Governor McMaster and advocates like Senator Tom Davis, South Carolina took a pair of closed, partially complete reactors from the brink of demolition to the brink of restarting construction. Quite an accomplishment. This morning, our panel will set the stage for the rest of the day by opening with topics of politics, energy needs, federal and state coordination, and the path forward for South Carolina and the nation. I have a few comments that I'd like to make, followed then by discussions with the panelists and a series of questions. So, as you have heard a little bit already this morning, South Carolina has developed a significant nuclear expertise and a long-term approach to meeting the state's future energy needs. And this is demonstrated by our 7 reactors and support for Savannah River with its 13,000 employees, as well as our undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate nuclear engineering programs. South Carolina made a $60 million investment in the mission of the Savannah River National Lab. Our political support to restart the construction of VC Summer, expand Westinghouse's fuel manufacturing facility, which is ongoing now, and relicensing of the reactor fleet has absolutely been unwavering. National demand for power is rising rapidly, as we all know, due to AI growth, hyperscale data centers, industrial expansion, and the reshoring of the U.S. of advanced manufacturing. These forces are reshaping the energy landscape and increasing pressure on states to ensure reliable, affordable power over the long run. Nuclear energy has reemerged as a central pillar of America's national security posture and our ability to compete with our adversaries. An expanded nuclear energy fleet will enhance our energy dominance, improve grid reliability, and support the expansion of our industrial base. VC Summer stands out nationally for its level of readiness, strategic value, and long-term opportunity for the state. VC Summer is unique as the only site in the country where a partially complete pair of reactors has 85% of the components needed to finish the project sitting in adjacent warehouses on site. South Carolina has approached the restart of VC Summer very, very deliberately. Under the leadership of Santee Cooper and Jimmy Staten, I don't know where Jimmy is, but I want to extend kudos to Jimmy for the work that he and his staff have done in making all this happen. We carefully evaluated the facts of the project to understand the options and lead with a responsible strategy to see it completed. Now, let us begin with the questions for the leaders on the stage who represent the essential state and federal authority needed to advance nuclear deployment. I'd first like to introduce Chairman David Wright, who serves as chairman of the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, appointed by President Trump in 2025 after previously serving on the commission from 2018 to 2025. Welcome. We're glad to have you here. A longtime South Carolina public servant, he earlier served in the South Carolina House of Representatives, was mayor and councilman of Irmo, and spent nearly a decade in the South Carolina Public Service Commission, including terms as vice chair and chairman. He also served as president of the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners. Chairman Wright brings decades of experience in utility regulation, nuclear oversight, and public engagement. A colon cancer survivor, Chairman Wright and his daughter are active advocates for cancer awareness and are frequently invited to share their message across the state. He partnered with the University of South Carolina to establish the Colon Cancer Prevention Network, which recently received funding from the South Carolina General Assembly. Our second guest and friend of mine is Senator Tom Davis, who represents South Carolina's District 46. This includes portions of Beaufort and Jasper counties. He chairs the Senate Labor, Commerce, and Industry Committee. Senator Davis has been a leading architect of South Carolina's recent energy reform efforts, including legislation directing Santee Cooper to evaluate the feasibility of completing VC Summer and strengthening the state's long-term generation planning network. Senator Davis was instrumental in moving VC Summer from a closed site to the forefront of the nuclear energy resolution, and the state owes you a big thanks for that, Senator. I've prepared a series of questions for our panelists covering federal alignment, regulatory readiness, legislative direction, and power demand. So let's get started. Our first category is from 2017 to today, what changed? So for Senator Tom Davis, you were in the legislature when VC Summer was halted. Why did you determine that South Carolina needed to reevaluate VC Summer?
Oh, thank you for that, Rick. And I think there's a couple things that changed to make it more economically feasible to complete the assets. First, I think it's just the explosion in demand for electricity. In recent years, you've seen a growth in AI technologies and the data centers that are necessary to support that. Very capital intensive. And so what you've seen are various hyperscalers or those that use these data centers willing to use their own balance sheet, willing to use their own money, their own creditworthiness to help complete assets. And so I think the first thing I would note, the change from 2017, is the demand side of the equation has exploded. In addition to that, when South Carolina began with VC Summer 2 and 3, the AP 1000 Westinghouse designs, we were the first ones. It's sort of a beta project. And anytime you're a beta project, you're going to encounter challenges. But since July 2017, you've seen Georgia complete 2 reactors in Vogtle. I believe 4 have been completed in China. Efficiencies have been developed in the process of building out those particular plants. Blueprints are now sophisticated. So I think that's the second thing that's changed, is that we've gotten through some of those preliminary things with a new design. And then third, we've had tremendous leadership at Santee Cooper. I mean, you mentioned it in your opening remarks, but it deserves emphasis. The leadership that Jimmy Staten has shown at Santee Cooper and the resolve to take this asset, which many back in 2017 considered to be a $9 billion wasted asset, a hole in the ground. And in fact, there was a debate on the floor of the Senate in January of 2018 about simply scrapping the project and selling the components on site for pennies on the dollar. And leadership shown by Governor McMaster, Speaker Merle Smith, Santee Cooper, kept all those assets in good condition on the ground in case economic conditions changed. And they have changed. And so good decisions made in the wake of that bad news in July 2017 set the stage for where we are today.
A good story. So politically, economically, and technically, there were massive changes then in the arena in its entirety. I would like to just comment on your statement with regards to the planning and so forth that went on at the conclusion of the closure. If it had not been for the fact that all of the equipment was preserved in the fashion in which it was preserved, with level A warehouse space, a crew that the legislature paid for to put out to maintain PMs and other such things, as well as the completion of the switchgear yard, critical activities which allow the plant to move aggressively forward. So for both of you folks, what makes VC Summer one of the most consequential nuclear opportunities in the United States today?
Wow. So first off, thank you for the invitation to be here today. And Rick, you and I walked the site November a year ago.
Yeah.
And I actually saw, because we'd heard that things had been cannibalized, but they had not been. Santee Cooper had kept it all rack stacked, covered, climate controlled, updated, upkept. I mean, everything was, it was perfect, and everything's there to build 2 plants. The only thing missing are 2 reactor coolant pumps, but they had 4, so they're good. And I got to see it. And for me, I was able to go back to the NRC, tell our people, you got to get down there. This is something that's going to happen. All the stars aligned. The money's there, the need's there, the bipartisan will of Congress is there. The vendors are there. We were able to take the Vogel Rev 19 version and last year make sure that it got a 40-year certification, design certification, so it can be built anywhere in the world, and which is a big step, and it certainly helps Westinghouse for sure. And everything to do it and to complete it, it was already in the state of South Carolina. It's here, and it's an exciting time. So the stars aligned. That's why it's going to happen.
I think it's also important. I mean, you ask why VC Summer 2 and 3 is so important. It's also happening within the context of a much larger 10-pack that the Trump administration wants to do for 10 AP1000s, throughout the country as part of America's nuclear renaissance. And VC Summer 2 and 3, one being 40% complete, the other 20% complete, it's going to be a first mover. It's going to be the one that demonstrates how these AP1000s can meet our nuclear needs. So while it's important to complete that asset and to bring the 2,200 megawatts online, the supply chains, the skilled workforce, the technologies, all those things, they open doors for us here in South Carolina to solidify ourselves as the leader for that renaissance. So that's equally important as completing the asset.
Thank you. I have to tell you, the friend of mine on the Nuclear Advisory Council, Jim Little, and I, when we first went down there, while we were driving down, I said, Jim, what do you think we're going to see? And we talked about it for a minute, and we finally concluded that what we were probably going to see was tumbleweeds, zombies, and the apocalypse. Turned out that wasn't the case, and a happy turn of events. So let's move on to the state leadership and regulatory alignment. For Senator Davis, what elements of South Carolina's recent energy legislation, including the Energy Security Act, create the foundation for major nuclear deployment?
Well, first of all, in the legislation that was enacted last year, the Energy Security Act, there are specific findings by the General Assembly that nuclear is going to play a critical role in our energy future. It is 24/7 stable, clean power. I'm a fan of solar. I'm a fan of renewables, but frankly, acknowledgement that they're not baseload capacity. We need to have baseload capacity. And so, as you noted earlier, there's over 50% of power in South Carolina through nuclear. We have that expertise. And so the General Assembly recognizes that. The second thing the General Assembly did is in passing the joint resolution directing Santee Cooper to do this RFP, it was very broad in scope. It recognized that the marketplace is entertaining new ways of going about generating power. And so this joint resolution laid out a blueprint to provide the latitude and the encouragement for Jimmy Staten and Santee Cooper to go out there in the marketplace and to see what the market would provide. And you can see with a first-class company like Brookfield coming on board, with their association with Westinghouse, I mean, the stars have all aligned. And so it's really exciting. And the General Assembly, I can tell you, Rick, stands ready to do whatever we need to do in the 2026 session to ease the way. It sounds as if the path has already been followed and the processes are in place, but Democrats and Republicans in the General Assembly alike are united in making sure this particular asset is built and comes to fruition.
Chairman Wright, from the NRC's perspective, what is fundamentally different in 2025 compared to 2017 regarding your agency's readiness to evaluate, restart a new AP1000?
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, prior to, we'll call it 2019, the old NRC, because we're a new NRC today, we're different. Everything was first of a kind. Everything was a snowflake. All the different plants, they were all the first of a kinds. So it took longer to get first of a kinds done, always does. It's the most expensive way to build a plant, right? So what's changed besides all the stars aligning up with the need and the money and the interest, the vendors, it's all there. The innovation is there. We were challenged by the Congress under the Advance Act in July of last year to retool ourselves, to rewrite our mission statement. And our mission statement before was about protecting the public and the environment. You know, we're a huge safety organization. That's our North Star. That's the strike zone over home plate. That we are a safety regulator. But we should have been, for the last 50 years, in my opinion, leaning in to enable, and this is what our new mission statement says, to enable the safe use and deployment of nuclear technologies and radioactive materials. So the difference is we are now not playing hide the rock anymore. We are now trying to assist these potential applicants craft the best application they can, answer as many questions on the front end through early engagement so that when they come in with an application, we can get it done timely and efficiently.
So have there been changes in process, or how has that been implemented within the agency?
Well, it's a culture change, right? The new mission statement now applies to anybody and everybody, no matter what they do. They can look at that mission statement and know, here's how that impacts the work that I do. From the top, we have to model that, which is what I try to do, and try to make it people who work in the bowels of the agency reviewing technical documents day in and day out, they don't feel like they're appreciated sometimes, right? So I want them to know, one, what you're doing here is going to help someone in rural America and maybe a country of like mind around the globe provide opportunities through electricity to gain education. And like in Ghana, for example, if we can build a nuclear plant there, they can get fresh water, they can have lights at night so that their kids can learn and actually impact their families, their communities, and their country in the end. We can do that in spades here in the United States as well. It's just understanding the whole of government approach and why what we do matters and to people here in this audience.
So one of the biggest concerns that every person expressed who was interested in this particular project had to do with the length of time and what they call the unpredictability of the permitting process. I trust that you have moved more aggressively towards a time frame arrangement.
So I don't subscribe to that. I mean, I know we're an easy target, and historically, people have said we've been slow. But what people also forget is that the regulating of a plant and when you're building it is one thing, but there's other factors that hurt here and hurt Vogel. You had COVID, right? You had incomplete engineering designs that weren't done, and they were trying to do things on the fly. That's not an NRC problem. That's a project management problem. But we get tagged with it. I get it. And I'll own it for the agency pre-2019, but you got to give us credit right now. We've been ahead on everything since 2019. Whoever's come in with a license or application, look at Abilene Christian, look at TerraPower, look at X Energy, look at Kairos, look at NewScale, right? We've been months ahead on the process. But here's the deal. This is the elephant in the room that I'm going to expose right now. We've only had 6 people bring applications before us. We've got them all done ahead. You've got 24 vendors out there right now who are in early engagement with us, but they haven't brought an application. You got another 36 potential applicants that we know are out there. We've read about them, but they have not engaged with us yet. That's 60 potential applicants, but no paper to review. So we can't review what we don't have, which is why this is such an important time for VC Summer. Utilities are looking at how do you meet the 400 gigawatt need that this country has? So there's only a couple of ways to really do it. Power uprates are one. Utilities are doing that, right? We've got to build more AP1000s. You've got to have license renewal and subsequent license renewals for existing fleets to keep them going. The next thing you do is bring old plants back to life or finish plants that are here. It's cheaper than really building new or building an advanced reactor. And then we're going to need micros and SMRs and advanced reactors too. We're going to need them all, but we're going to have to build a lot of big plants. Yep. And these two finishing here it's going to be a great news story for everybody.
Tom, do you have anything on that?
No, the thing I would point out is what I'm encouraged and what I've learned is you've got one level of activity occurring at the Santee Cooper level with Brookfield and with Westinghouse and structuring the deal. But concurrently with that is the licensing process, that working with, the federal agencies. It's not as if we're going to be waiting until the particular diligence is in place with Brookfield and Santee Cooper before you begin that federal process. Those things are going on concurrently. Those things are going on right now. So I'm encouraged, and we're fortunate to have someone like Commissioner Wright with such deep ties to South Carolina and a love for South Carolina, finding and helping us along those ways. So I think, it's important to understand that those different processes are not being consecutive, they're concurrent in nature.
Thank you. So one of the hardest parts of big infrastructure projects like VC Summer is gaining public trust. And so I'd ask you to comment on what does it look like in practice for the NRC, the governor, the legislature, Congress, to share the work of building public confidence in nuclear again?
Well, in my opinion, and I've dug into this since July 2017. Obviously, most legislators have, but the AP1000 Westinghouse design is a superior product. And most people in the United States, when they think of nuclear, they think of the plants that were built back in the 70s. They think of 3 Mile Island. They think of a technology that is just now exponentially different. So one of the things that I think should come out of conferences like this is just how good a design it is, how safe it is, how efficient it is, how materially different it is from the reactors that were built back in the 1970s. And so one of the things about VC Summer 2 and 3 restart as it's rebooted, that could be an education process for the American people to see that, yes, this is a long-term viable way for clean energy. So I think it gives us a chance to showcase that particular superior design.
Very good. Thank you. The next area to touch on is the state and federal playbook. And for Chairman Wright, as President Trump's executive level directives take effect, what remains the biggest federal constraints to rapid nuclear deployment? Permitting timeliness, licensing resources, workforce, or supply chain? And where do you see the most meaningful progress?
Well, you've got to engage. Right. We've got to communicate on every level with everybody. States have to communicate with the federal government. We, as a federal agency, we have to communicate with our sister agencies up there, DOE primarily. And we've got to keep Congress informed because there are going to be some needs that they can only answer. Right. So we've got to communicate. You can no longer be quiet. I think Senator Davis is exactly right. This is an opportunity for us to reset the conversation around what nuclear is and what it means to this country. And this time is now. It's no longer looking at what might come 5 years from now. It's here today. It is here. I can tell you, I went to Idaho National Labs. I went to Oak Ridge in the last month. I saw concrete and steel in the ground. It's happening. And I think the biggest things for us right now are going to be, it's not going to be the NRC that's going to be the problem. If there's a problem, it's going to be stuff that South Carolina can help with. Workforce, right? Supply chain. And then there's always, you can build the best plant in the world, but if you can't get it fueled, you got a problem. So fuel is going to be the big thing.
And I would say in South Carolina, in regard to workforce, we have a very strong technical college system. It was recently transferred into the Department of Employment and Workforce. And what it does is look at things like VC Summer 2 and 3 Restart that Santee Cooper and Brookfield want to do, finding out from those entities what sort of workforce they need, electricians, welders, things of that nature. So we have an opportunity through our strong technical college system to go ahead and develop that workforce that they're going to need to actually build the assets. So I think that's something that we at the state level can do while Brookfield and Santee Cooper hammer out the structure of the deal. We can make sure that the workforce is being trained to go ahead and actually build the facility.
And if I could add real quick, I got to plug the USC School of Business. We need accountants. You know, we need admins. We need people who can do that kind of work too.
Very good. I know that in the conversations I've had on various conferences, the subject of workforce continuously emerges, and the concerns with regards to adequate welders and adequate carpenters and all of the different crafts. So I hope that the solution will be found with our technical schools in partnership perhaps with high schools, because a lot of these craft folks are, as they graduate from high school, if they could enter a program, they'd be ready to work in about 18 months.
And one of the things that we did, Rick, a couple of years ago, the Speaker of the House, Merle Smith, completely overhauled how we go about coordinating those workforce needs with our technical colleges. So that's going to come into play as well.
Well, we have about 2 years before the big hammer falls on VC Summer. So I hope there's a fire lit in the furnace and everybody's working aggressively on that. For Senator Davis, South Carolina acted early this year by passing the Energy Security Act, which strengthened the state's long-term generation planning and positioned Santee Cooper to evaluate new nuclear options. Can you provide insights into what to expect in the General Assembly this year, more specifically around policy related to data centers and their ability to operate in the state?
Yeah, and that's going to come up. I mean, there have been some legislators, particularly in my chamber in the Senate, that have expressed concerns about data centers, concerns about the amount of energy they need, concerns about the water that they need, and have actually advocated disincentivizing or telling data centers they're not welcome in South Carolina. That is a minority position, and I think it's a very wrong-headed policy position to have. Data centers are going to be key to the next generation of industries, which are increasingly relying upon AI technologies. And so I think our challenge in the General Assembly is to encourage data centers to come here, but frankly recognize that the power needs that are associated with those particular assets, and I think that the owners of those assets are willing to pay for those power, and that they're not looking for the rate base to subsidize those data centers. They're willing to use their own balance sheet to do it. And also it's important to point out that there are new technologies in regard to the use of water for cooling in data centers that does not rely upon new supplies of water. They've got closed systems and can use, finite capacities of water. And so rather than discouraging data centers, we ought to be encouraging them and focusing on some of the externalities and then solving those externalities and having them come to South Carolina. Because I want South Carolina to be seen as a place that's welcoming for the next generation of industry. And we have to be smart about how we handle those things.
All right, one last question, if I may, and that is, what can government do at both the state and federal levels to ensure long-term consistency in policy, regulation, and project execution for major nuclear investments, especially as administrations change over time? Commissioner?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Rick. One thing I think about the nuclear sector, because there is bipartisan support and there is the genuine real-time need for power, that we're going to be okay, the nuclear sector going from administration to administration because of that bipartisanship. And I think that's going to be critical, right?
And I was talking to Commissioner Wright about that yesterday in preparation for this, and he pointed out that the ADVANCE Act was a bipartisan piece of legislation at the federal level. Here in South Carolina, the General Assembly, there is a bipartisan support for nuclear energy. It is clean energy. It's carbon, free. It's 24/7. So I don't think it's one of those areas of policy that's going to yo-yo between administrations depending upon who's in the Oval Office. I think that there is a broad consensus that nuclear is going to be the most effective way to meet our energy's long-term needs, and I think that's bipartisan. So I don't think in my opinion, there's not going to be the concerns there about somehow rolling back and private sector not being able to rely upon consistency of public policy.
Thank you, Senator. And I want to express my thanks to Chairman Wright and Senator Davis for today. I believe we have run out of time, and we are supposed to vacate, or they're going to bring a hook out here and pull us off. So thank you very much. I appreciate you all joining with us today.
Good job.